Alright, so in this video I'm going to try to show how to make a smudge stick. I'm not going to get into any of the spirituality or and that other sort of kind of stuff. I'm just going to show how to make a smudge stick out of white sage or Salvia apiana. This one here, I'm using a shell. You can do it this way. You can make a where you just have the loose leaves and you heat them up, and you can smudge your domain, you can smudge yourself. I've got links below explaining the different uses and benefits and why you would smudge even as an incense as well. I hope this will be interesting to some people. Like I said, I'm gonna stay. I mean, for many peoples, this is a spiritual thing. I'm not going to delve into that. Do your own research on that. We live in the information age. All you got to do is just type in smudging or smudge sticks or even white sage smudging. And there's other different type of aromatic herbs that can be used to do the same thing for different purposes. But right now what I'm going to focus on in this video is making a smudge stick like this out of white sage, and we'll see how it goes. Again, having a shell. Abalone shells are usually the ones that are used. This is a surf clam shell. You go to Red Lobster a lot, save your oyster shells and save your clam shells because they're useful for many other things other than smudging. Trust me, we'll get there. I'll talk about it later, but there you go. So let's begin. So here are a couple of or a few sage bundles that I've created from white sage or Salvia apiana. It's a Latin term or medicinal term, and it's quite easy to do once you've been able to identify the plant and harvest it. You dry it out, reconstitute it, wrap it, and then dry it out again, and it burns pretty well for smudging. Okay, now smudging, I'm not going to get into the spirituality aspect of it. That's out of the purview of my channel, and I'm not trying to offend nobody and their religious beliefs and spirituality, yada yada. As you can see, there's a couple here that I've already used, so I know the benefits, but this is just, I'm just showing a good way to be able to wrap these. And this little tassel here is kind of a way you hang them up so that they dry properly and so that they're ready for use. I provided links below if you want to do your own research, if you want to delve into the usages of smudging and using sage. And there's other fragrant herbs that you can harvest and collect to do the same thing, either from a medicinal standpoint, a spirituality standpoint, or just for incense, just to kind of, put fragrance in your house. Now, one caveat with white sage, it has a similar smell to a very popular funky plant. If you know, I don't need to say all that. Cannabis, okay, fine. So if you live in an apartment and you're burning a lot of sage, don't blame me if the landlord comes knocking at the door, all right? But just let them know that it's, sage, white sage. It's not that plant. Now, another way to use smudging is for shelters, like, when you're doing rustic shelters or you're doing primitive shelters like a debris hut. And you can smudge out, right? Because what happens, and especially in the summertime and springtime, is if you have a shelter that is made rustically or out of the earth, if you will, little critters like spiders and centipedes and roly-polies and ants and yada yada yada, they want to take shelter in those things. And so those types of critters, those creepy crawlies, don't like smoke. So you can kind of smudge out your shelter, whether you're using just leaves, because leaves tend to smoke rather than like burn or burst into flames. If you're doing this in a debris hut, you got to be careful so you don't, because a debris hut, a true proper debris hut is basically a big tinder bundle. So you got to be careful when you do that. but it's a good way to make sure the creepy crawlies, you know, find their way out. So you're not, you know, sleeping with the creepy crawlies, because it's not really very comfortable. So that's one use of smudging. But as far as the medicinal and the spiritual aspects of smudging, I'm going to just leave that to your own resources and research. And I provided a few links below so that you can determine what best use it is for you. Alright, so I have some white sage that I've harvested. This is wild harvested white sage. And so I'm going to take this, and I've got a vessel of cold water. I don't want to use warm water because the sage, even in and of itself, has a lot of good constituents that can be used medicinally, like as a tincture, or as a syrup, or as a tea, or an infusion, or a decoction. So I don't want to extrapolate that. And the hot water as a menstruum tends to do that. So I'm using cold water because all I want to do is get them wet so that it becomes pliable. So I'm going to take this, and this is a bunch of it. I just want to kind of soak it in the water, just for a little while, just to get them pliable, just to get the leaves pliable and stuff like that. And then that will help and aid in being able to wrap it into the stick that we need. Okay, so we'll just let this probably about 5-10 minutes or so, and then we can go ahead and wrap it and then hang it up to dry. Alright, so we've let our sage soak in some cold water for, you know, I said earlier, about, you know, a few minutes. Actually, because it's cold, it's actually taking longer, so I have to say half hour to 45 minutes just to get it pliable after being completely dry. Otherwise, if you harvest it wild and it's fresh, then you can certainly not need to do the soaking. You can just wrap it, which we're about to do. You can wrap it right away and then hang it up to dry. So right now I'm going to grab the bundle here, and as you can probably see maybe on camera, the water has taken on a different color. I'm just going to kind of wring this out a little bit. And that's what I mean by, if I had added hot water to this or warm water, then much more of the constituents of the herb would have gotten into the water, and it wouldn't be as potent from an aromatic standpoint, I believe. So, but I'm pretty sure it would have made it softer quicker, obviously, but then I wouldn't be able to handle it right away either. So anyways, we're going to set this aside because there's plenty of other leaves in here that I can set aside and strain and dry for some other usages. But we're going to take this here, I'm just going to bring it out a little bit, and now I've got some cordage here, and this is natural cordage. I would not recommend using like any commercial cordage that's been treated, because that would taint, especially if you're using this for spiritual use, it would contaminate what your purpose is. All right, so this is natural cordage here. I believe this is hemp. And again, not the THC having kind, just natural hemp cordage. So I mean, I could have made dog mane cordage, any kind of natural cordage, you know. So this just kind of went some sort of way, but that's okay. That's what scissors are for, or at least a good blade. So I'm just going to cut a length just to at least give you an idea of how this is going to work, how we're going to bundle this together. Probably going to need a length longer than what I think, and then I'll just deal with this little nest later on to untangle it. So this should be good enough. So yeah, that's my little nest of natural cordage here. Yeah, kind of bad. Oh well. Just set that aside. So what I'm going to do is, because there's a thick stem down here on this side here, is this is the side that I'm going to tie it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a loop knot, an overhand loop, a small one. It doesn't have to be that big. I'm just going to make a loop knot like this, a little bit more like that, and then just tie it off so I have a nice loop knot like that. And then what I can do is I can take the rest of my length and I can put it through the loop of the knot here and make a noose or a slip knot, which I can then kind of tie around the end here, or I can go the other way, but whichever. I want to express the concept. So I want to get around all of my whole bundle here. Make sure it's around everything. Okay, and I have my length of cordage here. Get this here. Okay, so now I can really tie this tight. Okay, and then what I want to do is I'm just going to do a bunch of half hitches. Okay, so what that means is I'm just going to loop this around and then take my length and pull it through my running end, as we say, and then go around again. But again, I want to have some length here. Hopefully this, I'm not off camera showing this. And I'm bundling it, and then I can go down and get tighter, go around and just keep going around. You're just gonna make consecutive half hitches all the way down. And what this does is, when this completely dries, is as you burn your sage, then there's always going to be some sort of like locking mechanism in the cordage, so the whole thing doesn't come apart. Okay, so I found this to be quite useful and simple and useful. That's what we want. And it's going to keep going all the way down, so it creates a nice little bundle. And again, we're using natural cordage so it doesn't taint the smudging capacities of our stick, of our smudge stick. Okay, so we're about at the end of our stick here, of our wrapping. I'm going to do one more just for good measure. Just making half hitches is all. And then to lock it off, I'm just going to do a bunch of other half hitches. Like a couple. Excuse me, it's winter time up here and I got a lot of phlegm in my throat, so please excuse me clearing my throat. Apologize. Constantly. Just do a bunch of half hitches in the same spot. Maybe one more for good measure. And there we go. So this is what we have. We have some extra that can be used for other uses. That's the reason why we use cold water, so we didn't take all the constituency out of what we have left over here. So this here, now we can kind of straighten this up, and at this stage, while it's kind of wet and moist, you can kind of shape it. And I'm going to do some snipping, some cleanup. So I can go ahead I can go ahead and now cut my cordage, set the rest aside because it could be used as enough for another one. And then I can go ahead and kind of, to be nice and neat, get rid of some stragglers or whichever. This will be the end, this will be the beginning. So again, this is kind of the finished piece here, all right, for smudging. And you know what I would do then is, let me go ahead and clean this off here. Alright, so now that we have our finished wrapped but wet smudge stick, we need to let it hang and to dry for probably about a week or so, depending on the humidity level of your house. Or if you live in a place like New Mexico, Arizona, then obviously you can just hang it outside for a few hours. It'll probably be good and dry. I know that life, trust me. Like, it's hot out there. So I'm just, again, making another loop here, so that what I can do is, in my cordage, okay, if you didn't see before, oops, making another loop. So in my cordage here, I can take the other end and basically make a slip knot just by putting this through here. And I've designated the thick stems here, right here, as the end. And then I can just take this and I can just tie this and cinch it real tight, like that. And while it's wet, you can really cinch it tight. Okay, and then I'm gonna snip this. And actually, before I snip it, I'm probably gonna make another loop, another overhand loop knot in here, like that. And then you'll see why in a minute. Just kind of get rid of it, the running end, get rid of that. And I still have enough cordage to probably make another bundle if I wanted to. So now what I can do is I can kind of hang this like that, right? But what I do oftentimes is, you can get these hooks. You can either buy them or make them. And this is just from an old hanger, needle nose plier, you know, or you know, one that can snip the hanger, and then use the needle nose pliers to bend it to make it basically an S shape. And then now what I can do is I can just put this through the loop like that, and now I can hang this, you know, on wherever I want to hang, you know, and then let it just sit and dry. Okay, so just kind of as a idea of kind of how to do that. I do that with a lot of herbs and stuff that I want to dry. You can wash the herbs, squeeze them out a little bit, and then just hang them up. Or when they're freshly harvested, I do the same thing, and I just hang them up and let them air dry. So that's, you know, usually takes about 2 weeks for them to be completely dry, depending on the humidity in your environment. So that's pretty much it. We're gonna let this hang to dry, and that's how at least I make a smudge stick.